Hi, I'm Sherry, and the section of the writer's journey that I am going to be covering with my partner Aiden is pages 355 to 384, and I'll start with the very first part, which the first section is called the writer's journey, and it says that the beauty of the hero's journey model is not only that it describes a pattern in myths and fairy tales, but it is also an accurate map of the territory one must travel to become a writer, or for that matter, a human being. And I love that this compares that to be human is to be a writer. It compares the hero's journey to the writer's journey and states that anyone setting out to write a story will soon encounter all the same trials and ordeals and joys and rewards. They will meet the shadows, shapeshifters, mentors, tricksters, and threshold guardians in the interior landscaping. So the comparison of shadows would be perhaps for a writer, low self-esteem or confusion about the goals that the writer is trying to set or trying to accomplish. Shapeshifters could be compared to unrealistic dreams of success or distractions. Distractions are a big one. Tricksters, accidents, computer problems, that's huge. I mean, we depend on our computers for everything, even for this project. Difficulties with time and discipline. If we are not able to manage our time and aren't disciplined to accomplish the plan for our goals, we're not going to accomplish very much. Threshold guardians, maybe it's the editor or one's own judgmental side. And tests and ordeals could be compared to deadlines, editorial decisions, or the struggle maybe to sell our work. And all these things perhaps block our way or chill our work, torment us, taunt us, do all sorts of hard things to keep us from accomplishing our goal and keep us from writing. Writing is an often perilous journey inward to probe the depths of one's soul and bring back the elixir of experience. So we go through all these things not in vain, but we bring back the elixir of experience, or according to Vogler, a good story. Vogler believes that writing is magic, and as writers I think we would all agree. And in many cultures, the letters of the alphabet were more than just communication. They were believed to have powerful magical power that could be used to cast spells, for instance, or predict the future. And when you think about it, we do teach our children to spell, not cast spells, but to spell with using the letters. And we often may say that words don't have power, and that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And this is not true, because we know that words do have power to hurt or heal. Mean words that are said to us, happy words, kind words that are said to us, whether we hear the word guilty or ready, aim, fire, or I do, or we'd like to buy your screenplay. This can bind us, condemn us, or bring us joy. And so they can hurt or heal us with their magical power. And the healing power of words is their most magical aspect. Writers like the shamans or medicine men and women of ancient cultures have the potential to be healers. And so in this book, we're compared as writers to the shaman. And the shaman has been called, or is, the wounded healer. And like writers, so the comparison is that they are like writers, they are special people set apart from the rest by their dreams, their visions, and their unique experiences. And so shamans, like many writers, are prepared for their work by enduring, and we can probably relate to these, enduring terrible ordeals. But some shamans have had dangerous illnesses, fallen from cliffs, breaks nearly every bone in their body, been chewed up by a lion or mauled by a bear, and they're basically taken apart and put back together in a new way. So they died and been reborn. And this experience gives them special powers so that they're capable of healing and doing what shamans do, is to heal. And as writers, we travel to other worlds, not as mere daydreamers, but as shamans with the magic power to bottle up those worlds and bring them back in the form of stories for others to share. Our stories have the power to heal, to make the world new again, to give people metaphors by which they can better understand their lives. And I think that's pretty awesome that we as writers have that kind of power. The next section talks about the appendices, or it goes into, it's the appendices, which is the rest of the story. There are additional tools for mastering the craft, and the first one is a section called What's the Big Deal? And Christopher Vogler was talking about in this section that how his story editor had called a meeting to see who knew what a scene really was. And he was really surprised at how he had thought, in film school, he'd learned that a scene is a short piece of a movie taking place in a location and one span of time in which some action takes place or some information is given. And the editor said, wrong. She continued to say that a scene is a business deal. It may not involve money, but it will involve some change in the contract between characters or in the balance of power, and it will always do this. And so, if a scene is a deal, then what is a story? One answer is that a story is also a deal, but the contract in this case is not between the characters in a scene, but between you and the audience. The whole story is. And moving to the next section, which is called Stories Are Alive. It discusses a story that many may have heard about Rumpelstiltskin, which tells of a story of a miller who brags to the king that his daughter is so amazing that she can spin straw into gold. And so the king wants to see this girl and demands to have her do that for him. He's greedy. And so he tells the miller, though, that if he is wrong, he will have her killed if she cannot spin the straw into gold. And so she's taken into her room and locked in there, and she isn't sure what she's going to do. And suddenly a little man, or a mannequin, as the tale says, comes in and asks why she's crying, and she tells her dilemma, and he says, I'll do it for you if you promise to give me a necklace, your necklace or your ring. And so when she performs the task and he helps her spin the straw into gold, which he is able to do, the king is so impressed he wants her to do more. And so each time she spins a little bit more straw into gold, and the king wants more. And the little mannequin, he asks for things that she can give him at the end of the task, and then she's out of things. She's given the necklace, she's given her ring. So she says, I don't have anything else to give. And he says, well, what if after you become the queen, because this third time that she spins the straw into gold, he will marry her and she'll become the queen. But it's a huge amount of gold that he wants. And so the mannequin asks if she will give her firstborn child. And so the price for getting out of her trouble is very high, escalating from material treasures like a necklace or a ring to life itself, to the first child. Whatever the risk, she'll agree to it to get out of that room and out of danger from the king's wrath. Her wish to escape, expressed by a strong burst of emotion, has called the little man and the adventure into being. And I think that's what is amazing, because her whole desire, her whole wish is what created the man that eventually created the story and helped her get out and helped her into a new dilemma. And that brings us to the next section, which is the power of wishing. And wishing may be an underlying principle of storytelling. The hero is almost always discovered in a difficult or uncomfortable situation, just like with Rapunzel's or Rumpelstiltskin's princess, or the miller's daughter. And so almost always discovered in a difficult, uncomfortable situation, and very often making a wish to escape or to change the conditions. And the wish is often verbalized and is clearly stated in the first act of many movies. Like in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, her song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, is a wish to escape the land where troubles are, or escape to a land where troubles are far behind her. The next section talks about wants versus needs, and through the triggering device of wishes, stories seem to like arranging events so that the hero is forced to evolve to a higher level of awareness. And often the hero wishes for something that they desperately want at that moment, but the story teaches the hero to look beyond to what he or she really needs. A hero may think she wants to win a competition or find a treasure, but in fact the story shows that she needs to learn some moral or emotional lesson, like how to be a team player, how to be more flexible and forgiving, how to stand up for herself. In the course of granting the initial wish, the story provides hair-raising, life-threatening incidents that challenge the hero to correct some flaw in his or her character. The next section is the wishes of the audience. It pays to think about what audience members wish for themselves and the heroes in the story. As writers, we play a tricky game with our readers and viewers. We evoke a strong wish through our characters, then spend most of the story frustrating the wish, making it seem that the characters will never get what they want or need. Usually in the end, we grant those wishes and show how they are achieved by struggle, by overcoming obstacles, and by reconsidering them, with the desire sometimes shifting from what the hero thinks she wants to what she really needs. And the next section is progressing from wishing to willing. Encountering conflicts and obstacles can force characters to evolve in a yet higher level on the pyramid of emotions. That of willing, which is quite a different mental state than mere wishing. And I use this picture to kind of illustrate this wishing to willing. We have a reflection of an actual beautiful formation of cliffs and mountains and trees, and it's reflecting into a lake. And the reflection in the lake, if it wasn't for the reflection of the item, it wouldn't even exist. But the just wishing, if this item wasn't there, it wasn't possible, it wouldn't even reflect onto the lake. And yet, the going from wishing to willing, you go from just wishing for the item to actually being on the path of a reachable and obtainable object or goal. So a will is a wish concentrated and focused into a firm intention to achieve a goal step by step. Wishes can evaporate at the first setback, but the will endures. And that's the end of this section, and Aiden will take over the next section, which covers polarity.
Hey everybody, Aiden here, and today I'm going to be talking about polarity. Also, there's been some construction work going on outside, so it might get kind of noisy. Apologies, but let's get into it. Okay, so polarity is an essential principle of storytelling, governed by a few simple rules, but capable of generating infinite conflict, complexity, and audience involvement. So at the beginning of the chapter here, Vogler talks about this concept of oneness and two-ness. Oneness is a sense of unity and completeness that forms the spine or theme of a film, and two-ness is a dimension of duality to create tension and possibility of movement. So if oneness is sort of the film as a whole, the message or the theme of the film, everything that comes together to make it complete. Two-ness is acknowledging the fact that there's somewhere where that unity has to come from, where it all has to come together, which implies the existence of more or of two. Polarized system. Polarity is automatically generated. So by having this unity, you have to have all of its parts, or two-ness or polarization. Unity begets duality. The existence of one implies the possibility of two. So by creating a protagonist, a motivation, a theme, etc., a positive pole is created. A negative pole is created automatically as the natural opposite to the positive pole. For example, trust versus suspicion, peace versus war, protagonist versus antagonist. We have an example of a polarized system with the positive pole at one end and the negative pole at the other. Polarity in a story seems to be an engine that generates tension and movement in the characters and a stirring of emotion in the audience. So by creating two extremes, we create the possibility for tension and conflict. Okay, now let's take a look at the rules of polarity, and there's 16 of them, so let's get into it. Rule number 1 is that opposites attract. Contrasted characters are drawn together like the positive and negative poles of a magnet. Relationships between contrasted characters can take many forms. So this can take the form of two characters who are aligned with one another, who are friends, let's say, that have very different contrasting traits, but by working together, they become more rounded and completed by one another. And while there's usually a sense of antagonism in relationships like this, it's always friendly. Typically, the characters still want to work together to reach the same goal. But this can also take the form of an actual protagonist versus antagonist, or the hero versus the villain. Rule number 2, polarized conflict attracts the audience. So polarized relationships generate conflict as characters at two opposing extremes challenge one another. Conflict automatically and endlessly attracts attention. And I think that that's pretty true of all things where there's conflict. Attention is drawn. Number 3, polarity creates suspense. The struggle between two opposing characters, goals, or ideas places the audience in a state of suspense. We have an inherent desire to see the outcome of suspense, which invests and immerses us in the struggle. This leads us to ask questions like, who will win, who will lose, who is right, who is wrong, and this suspense is what keeps us invested in a story. It keeps us wanting to see what happens next as these two extremes, the opposite ends of the polarity, pull and push at one another to see which one will come out on top. Rule number 4, polarity can reverse itself. Just as when the polarity of a magnet is reversed and the two ends no longer attract, but now repel one another, the forces that bring two characters together may reverse themselves, changing from a force of attraction to a force of repulsion. Reversals are a part of the life cycle of stories. They can be quick and temporary, or they can be major turning points. So when a reversal happens, it invests us further in the story because we see a change occur in circumstances, and that makes us want to see what happens next. All right, rule number 5 is reversals of fortune. A change of luck, for better or worse, further invests the audience in the story and characters as the prevailing conditions change from positive to negative or vice versa. So as we see characters go through ups and downs, we become, again, more invested. We want to see where they're going to end up, where the reversal will bring them to next, and it gives us a chance to see progression from one state to another and how the character will develop after going through this reversal. Vogler suggests that good stories tend to have at least 3 to 4 reversals for the main character, but can have more. Rule number 6 is recognition. Moments in a story when the dynamic changes due to a revelation of familiarity. So a classic example of this is when Darth Vader reveals himself as Luke's father and irrevocably changes the dynamic of their relationship, and Prince Charming placing the glass slipper on Cinderella's foot and realizing she's the girl of his dreams. In both of these cases, one character or both characters had a very clear picture of what the other character was in their mind. For Luke, his clear picture of Darth Vader was the embodiment of evil, of his enemy. But once he's revealed as his father, there is this sense of vulnerability between the two of them and this familiarity that allows the story to take deeper roots and to get us more invested. So basically, recognition is when a character who thinks they know something about another realizes, actually, this is more familiar than I thought, and then how that changes the relationship. All right, rule number 7 is romantic reversals. When a friendship or relationship is thriving between two characters, we can feel the spark or good chemistry between them. A romantic reversal sees the relationship turn from one of attraction to one of repulsion. In romantic stories, there are often multiple romantic reversals that usually end with the main characters realigned, but this can also take the course of a love that was doomed to fail. Good examples of this are Fatal Attraction and 50 First Dates. Rule number 8 is polarity and the character arc. In many stories, two protagonists work together to achieve the same goal, but go about doing so in wildly different ways due to their polarizing traits. Having an antagonism or competitiveness between them allows both characters to develop more fully as they interact with and learn from one another. So while they contrast and are at two ends of extremes on the scale of polarity, they still, as we discussed earlier, sort of help to complete one another to achieve what they might not have been able to on their own. A good example of this is Zoolander, or if you've seen it, The Lighthouse. In this section of the book, Vogler has this list of polarized traits. We won't go over all of them, and it's definitely not an extensive list, but just to give you an idea for traits you could give characters to polarize them. We have sloppy versus neat, brave versus cowardly, feminine versus masculine, open versus closed, suspicious versus trusting, optimistic versus pessimistic, planned versus spontaneous, just to name a few. Rule number 9 is the other end of the spectrum. When a main character goes through a major change or reversal, that change is felt not just by the audience, but also by the other characters that share a relationship with them. So the important thing to consider here is that when the main character goes through a reversal and they have a major dynamic change in their situation, whether it be from high to low or low to high, that is felt through the relationships that the main character has with every other character in the film. So one affects the other. Every action taken by a main character, we'll say character A, has an effect on the emotions and actions of the supporting character in the relationship, or character Z. Rule number 10 is going to extremes. When considering polarity, there is a natural inclination to gravitate towards extremes on opposite ends of a spectrum. Having these extremes can allow for dynamic storytelling, as well as serving to allow characters at opposite extremes to have their own moments to shine, or to show off their own strengths or flaws. Allowing a middle ground to develop in this situation is a useful tool for growing a relationship and for character development. So, being able to find the middle ground between the two extremes. Rule number 11 is reversal of the reversal. Just as reversals are necessary for character development and advancement of the plot, a reversal of the reversal, or double reversal, allows us to see characters swing between highs and lows throughout the story, which keeps us engaged. There's often at least one reversal of the reversal in a story, as the character swings from one extreme to the other and back again. This can take the shape of a recovery or relapse, landing the character back to a similar state from where they started, but now more balanced as a result of their experiences. And we also have a few diagrams here with the reversal of the reversal to help you understand how this plays out a little better. So in the first, we have A's comfort zone and Z's comfort zone. A is rigid and controlling, while Z is loose and relaxed. In the second, we have A experiencing temporary reversal of polarity and pushing Z towards the opposite pole. In the third diagram, we have under pressure from Z, A begins to oscillate, experimenting with extremes of behavior. And finally, A and Z return to their natural comfort zones, but closer to the center, with expanded possibilities, allowing experience of both sides of the polarity. Okay, rule number 12, polarity seeks resolution. Polarization, whether between two characters, factions, ideas, themes, etc., strives toward a relief of tension. While this tension can be relieved through one extreme succeeding over the other, it can also be relieved by finding a balance between the extremes. As Vogler puts it, the protagonist's point of view, or style of living, is the thesis of a story. The antithesis is the antagonist's opposing viewpoint and style. The synthesis is whatever resolves the polarized conflict at the end. Rule number 13, polarized universes. Polarized systems operate at all levels in stories, from large scale to intimate. And polarization at every level is concurrent and interconnected, with each polarization being influenced by the other. So think of them all as an interconnected web, where if there is an experience or a shake in one section, that is felt throughout all of the rest. And rule 14 is inner polarity. Polarity can also be intimate, taking place within a character's psyche. Inner struggle, being pulled in two directions at once, creates inner polarity. Good examples of this are Tyler Durden in Fight Club and Smeagol and Gollum in Lord of the Rings. Rule 15 is Aegon. Now, Aegon is the Greek god of struggle and conflict, and the literal translation of his name is judgment. So, Aegon should sound familiar because it is the root of both protagonist and antagonist, that Aegon in the middle. And he's important and mentioned here basically because struggle and judgment are inherent and essentials to storytelling. So Aegon is always present within your story and within your character. And finally, rule number 16 is polarity gives orientation. Just as the polarity of a magnet allows us to navigate with a compass, polarity in a story gives us a sense of direction and momentum. The audience is inclined to orient themselves within the world of a story through the polarities that are presented. And polarity allows the audience to quickly identify and align to the position of the protagonist. All right, and that's our last rule of polarity. I hope that after this, you guys have a little bit better understanding of how this sense of two-ness that we discussed at the beginning is essential to storytelling. Thank you.